Okay, my name is Dodds. I work for a company called @Task. Yes, we're hiring. You can talk to Ethan about that. I'm going to do something a little bit weird. First, I want everybody to stand up, please. You're going to participate in this talk. Please stand up. So it's 11:30. We're all hungry. The snacks are great, but they don't fill us. So we're going to get the blood flowing. I want everybody to join with me in doing air squats. You know what air squat is? You just bend down and back up. We're going to do 12, okay? Ready? On my count. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Come on, fam. 4, 5, 6. We're halfway there. 7, 8, 9, 10. Just 2 more. You can do it. 11, 12. Oh man. Awesome. Okay, now wait. Stretch as high as you can. We gotta keep this blood flowing, man. Okay, stretch over to your right, my left. Oh, it should feel really good right there. Yeah, and then back. Yeah, it feels good. Okay, let's see the arms here. Stretch over. Let's sitting at a cross elbow. Okay, now your wrists. Last thing. You gotta do your wrists because we're at a keyboard all day. So, all right. Anybody else want to do more? Like you can do legs. Like that feels good. So, okay, you're great. Thank you very much. You can sit down. Appreciate it. Right, so that's my talk. Thank you for coming. Yeah. So we're here to talk about Genie.js, and it is a library that I've written to improve the experience of people using your web application. So to kind of explain why Genie.js is something that you really care about, I need a volunteer. I need somebody who knows what this application is, but doesn't realize that this application has keyboard shortcuts. Raise your hand if you are in that category, whether you want to volunteer or not. All right, could you please volunteer? Come on down. Thank you so much. I was nervous when asking that. I was like, room full of computer people that probably all know the keyboard shortcuts, but that's okay that you don't. It's actually a good thing. So I'm gonna tell you one keyboard shortcut, and that's question mark. But I'm not gonna show you those. Don't use that one. Okay. So we're just trying to see how intuitive the keyboard shortcuts are. So normally I'm a 0 inboxer. I get my inbox down to 0. I pulled a couple of messages in my inbox so we can play with it. You see right here, what you're going to do is you're going to pretend that you don't have a mouse. You don't know, like, for some reason or another, you can't use the trackpad, okay? So you have to interface with this application, totally free of a mouse. There are people on this planet who are in that situation. But I get to use now. And so Zillow, my wife and I are looking casually for a home. Zillow is a good place to find them. If you could open that up and archive it for me, that would be great because I've already looked at that email.
Alright, well, you could get to it by tabbing a bunch of times, I'm guessing.
You can try. I'm not looking for anything. Like, what you're doing is actually what I'm looking for. This is great. So is there no intuitive way to do this?
Well, it's the third one down.
Just try anything. Try anything that you can think of.
So I hit 3. Didn't jump to it. Didn't highlight it or anything.
All right, let's. You can make a call to the audience. Let's ask the audience. What do you guys think?
J&K?
Yeah, Vim, try that. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So before you keep going, we know that because convention, right? Because Vim does that. We're programmers. But actually, Twitter uses the same convention. GitHub, Facebook, everybody uses this convention of J&K. Why? Does anybody know why we use J&K? So what?
Because of Vim.
Well, because of Vim. Why did Vim choose J&K?
Because that, like, from game controllers.
Yeah, so why did game controllers use J&K?
Because they're...
Yeah, maybe they're associated with each other on the keyboard. But the letter J and the letter K that makes no sense. It's totally non-intuitive. The only reason it's intuitive to us is because it's just been the convention that we've been using. So, okay, go ahead and navigate to that, open it up. Okay, wow, the Oaks before 1950s kitchen. That's awesome. Okay, so now if you could archive this email for me, we've seen this, I'm not really interested.
Okay, well.
Yeah, so we can change it over here. That's nice. Oh, that's a reply all, I'm afraid. Yeah, so like you can think of, okay, so A, okay, that's reply all, that's probably reply, right? So we'll go through the whole word with every character. It's actually the very last word, E. Obviously, it's archive E. So that makes a lot of sense. So now let's go to my sent folder. Can you navigate to my sent folder? S doesn't work. You just started YouTube for me. That's cool. Okay, I've inflicted enough on you. To go to your sent, you actually hit G and then T, not S. G would go and then T for sent, I guess. So like you learn these things over time. You can sit down. Thanks. What's your name? Joe. Joe. I'm gonna use your name later. Thank you. Okay. So like we learn these things over time, and it's really cool, especially since we can open up the help and say, oh, okay, now I can look at all these different things. But like this is part of the problem. Look at all these shortcuts. And you know why we have so many shortcuts? Because we have so many things that we can do in this application. This is a complex application. And they do their very best to map keyboard shortcuts to the controls that you have in the application. But it's still a very complex app. And it makes learning these keyboard shortcuts a little difficult. The worst part of it is, like we do have those conventions like mix and previous, but if we go to GitHub, they show a subset of their keyboard shortcuts, and the reason is because if you look at this, that's not too intimidating. Like there are obviously some application-specific things in GitHub that you're going to learn here, and it's not transferable to Gmail, right? I'm not going to look at my repositories in Gmail. But then if I go to show all, I get exploded with all of these keyboard shortcuts that I can use, which is awesome, but like none of this information is transferable. I have to learn it, and lots of these things I don't do like very often. And so you don't actually end up learning these keyboard shortcuts because you don't use them very frequently. And so you're left to the mouse. And the mouse is, in my opinion, like one of our worst interfaces to the computer. You have like single click, double click, sometimes a triple click, and then with Mac you have the gestures, and that's awesome. But in the web you don't really get those gestures as much. But then I've got a keyboard. On my keyboard there's 78 keys, and then I have modifiers. So like I'm not going to do the math, but I have a lot of ways to interface with my computer just using the keyboard. And that's why we've created these keyboard shortcuts, because it gives us a much faster way to interface with the web application. So, and this is what I'm going to just refer to as the Gmail problem, because there's just so much you can do, and they don't even have keyboard shortcuts for everything, just because after a while you run out of things that are even remotely sensible, because your namespace is so small. So that's the problem, and this is a problem that Genie tries to solve. So I'm going to talk about Genie by talking about the application I'm attempting to emulate, which is Alfred. So who here is familiar with Alfred? Okay, who here is going to stop using Alfred when Yosemite drops and we get sweet Spotlight? Maybe, I might. Yeah, Spotlight in the next version of OS X is going to be amazing, so I might stop using Alfred. I don't know, we'll see. Alfred's pretty amazing. But just to kind of demonstrate what Alfred can do for those of us who aren't as familiar with it, it can do a lot of things, but if you notice here at the bottom where my applications are, it probably looks a lot smaller than most people's, and that is because I don't use the mouse to open new applications. I would just like to look down there and be like, those are the apps that I have open. And if I want to open a new application, then I just start typing the name of the application, then I hit enter, and boom, I have a snowman emoji, which is awesome. And then another cool thing is Alfred learns me as a user over time, so I can actually train it to say, hey, when I type to you, what I'm actually about to type is tree for source tree. And so after a couple of times teaching Alfred, all of a sudden source tree is the first result. And so it learns you over time. And then I'm going to train it back to terminal because source tree is awesome, but it's not as cool as a terminal. So that's what Alfred can do, and that's what Genie attempts to do in a web context. So that's, yeah, just in a nutshell. We're going to talk about the things that you as an application developer can do to make your website more accessible and more usable and provide a better user experience using Genie as like an emulation of Alfred. So now I'd like to tell everybody a story, and it is how Genie came to be. So about a year ago, I was working at another company, and they have a huge product. It's like 150,000 lines or so of JavaScript code just on the front end, and so like naturally, it's a very complex application, tons of buttons and actions that you can perform. And they have no keyboard shortcuts, and I was starting to be like, wow, this application really needs keyboard shortcuts. So for a hack night, I put together a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts, and I found, after a little bit of time, that I kind of ran into the Gmail problem. Like, I can't use this keyboard shortcut because I'm already using it for this. And so now I'm having to do like archive as B. Like, that makes so much sense. I actually forked the project that we were using for our keyboard shortcuts so that I could do keyboard combinations, so I could have like GN to go to notifications and that kind of thing, so that I opened my namespace a little bit, but it still was like so confining. And I thought, like on my desktop I use like keyboard shortcuts quite a bit, but when I really want to do some awesome stuff, I'll use Alfred to navigate around my application or around my desktop. And so I just thought, like, is there an Alfred for the web? And I couldn't find any, and so I decided I'd create it. And so on my spare time, I created Alfred for the web. And I started out with Q. If anybody gets that reference to Star Trek, Q can do like anything. I'm a Trekkie. And I decided that wasn't a very good name because it's kind of like been taken by a terrific library. So I eventually landed with Genie, which is great because Genie has this unlimited list of wishes, and so each one of these things that you see here is a wish that you can like ask Genie to do. And the cool thing is, you get more than 3 wishes with Genie. So I developed this out here on my side, like as a side project, and then I felt like it was ready to go into a product. And so for another hack night, I created I integrated it with our product. I made a whole bunch of wishes in like 3 hours and just like loaded our product full of Genie stuff. And I demoed it to some of the people at the hack night. I think I won something. And but the really cool part of the story is my buddy that I work with, Matt Christensen, was so impressed. Like at the time, maybe backtrack. At the time, I was an intern at this company, and desperately hoping to get a full-time opportunity once I graduated from college. All my buddies were starting to get full-time offers and stuff, and so I was like, I've got a baby, I've got another baby on the way, a wife to take care of. Like, I need to get a full-time opportunity, and I've already rejected an opportunity with another company I wasn't really interested in working with, so I was kind of getting nervous, really wanted to get a job with this company. And so Mac goes to Josh James, our CEO, and I don't know if you're familiar with that name, but like he scares me. He's just like very charismatic. But anyway, he comes over, and let me draw this picture real quick. This is what our cubicles look like. So we had like this little entryway, and then we had this area back here And these are all just walls, and you have a couple desks right here, some more desks right here, and I sit right here. So we walk in here, Merrick's following us and Josh, and I sit at my desk, smiling face, but kind of scared too. And Josh stands behind me, he's all smiley, like, what can this intern really show me? And then it's a hack night, right? So we have a whole bunch of developers, and they come follow us in, and so they're crowding around back here, so we're locked in. And Merrick says, yeah, I can't show Josh this cool thing that you built. So I'm trying to explain to him like why it's so cool, and I'm freaking out because he's the CEO and I don't want to get fired or anything. And he starts to get it, and he's like, oh, that's pretty cool. And so Merrick turns to him and says, yeah, Josh, and the cool thing is this guy is an intern. Like he doesn't even know what he's doing. Who is this guy? But he made this thing. And I took that opportunity, and kind of jokingly, but I turned to Josh and I said, that's right, Josh, and if you give me an offer right now, I'll accept it. And everybody, like, all the developers around were like, oh my gosh, Josh is going to eat his face off. And I was just joking, but Josh was like, okay. And he grabs a paper and a pen, and he slides it over to me and says, what's your number? And I write down my number, I slide it back to him, and he calls the HR lady, the VP, and out of that night, we get this. So this is my official offer letter to work at this company. Because of Genie. So if nothing else, Genie got me my first job out of college. Yeah, about a year ago at Hack Night. That was awesome. And I have a signature, so if it's like worth millions of dollars, I can sell my offer letter with this. Yeah, so that was an awesome story, and Genie is in that product now. And so, yeah, that's enough about the backstory of Genie, what it is, why it's important, why I'm committed to it. Before I actually go into how you use Genie, I want to stop and open the floor for questions. I don't really expect a whole lot right now, so that's okay. But in the future, I won't be so easy to make you keep going. I'm going to make you guys ask questions. So here we are on the demo page. We'll just kind of look at using Genie. And so I want to make a clear distinction between Genie and the lamp. So what you're seeing here, this is a lamp. This is a totally separate thing. Genie is a zero dependency, like 3.5 kilobyte library that I wrote, and it's vanilla.js. And then there's the lamp, and this is written in Angular, and I'm hopefully eventually going to write a vanilla lamp. Eventually, I'd like to do that so people can use it without Angular. But it's just important to recognize the distinction between the engine that's running the lamp and the lamp itself. So anyway, here we have the lamp, and as part of the demo, some of the actions you can perform on this demo are to change the lamp style. So we'll go in, and it looks like we can change it to dark, small, slow, and use a custom template. So we'll say dark, make the lamp dark, cooler, small, not small, and slow, and I really don't like slow, so we're going to make it precedent. And then make a custom template. So now you can provide your own, and this is part of the Angular directive, but you can make a custom template that's transcluded, and you get all the happy goodness of whatever it is that you want. And large. There's a reason that defaults to this. Okay, great. So that's just a couple of the things that you can do here in the demo, but we're going to go to the workshop. And the URL for the workshop is just up here. Or actually, that's the URL to the demo. You can do exactly what I did. It's very intuitive. Just hit Control Space, type workshop, and boom, you're there. You don't have to learn the keyboard shortcut. Okay, so here we are with the workshop. It's, let's just jump in. Let's get started. So this first step, this is just explaining how the workshop works. And I'm not really going to go through the workshop a lot. I'm just going to kind of describe what Genie can do, and then you can, if you want to, you can go back in the workshop. But the cool thing about this little workshop is all of this code can be run, and the output is jailbroken. So we'll say console.log Joe Rex. That's right. Thank you, Joe. So we hit rerun code, Joe rocks, boom, and then as it times out, it was great. Sorry, Dan. And then down here you get the options from Genie. So all the Creo things that Genie has internally, you get this there. So we'll go ahead and go to our wish registration. So to register a wish with Genie, like with Alfred, it's really cool because he'll index your whole file system. Genie, that doesn't make so much sense. So we're not going to index the file system, and we're not going to index the page because that would not be an awesome user experience. So you explicitly tell Genie the things that a user can do on your page. And the way that this is done is every wish consists of magic words. Oh, sorry, let me zoom that up a little bit. Every wish consists of magic words and an action. And so magic words can be a string or an array of strings, and then an action is a function, and then there are special actions that we'll see later. But here we have take out the trash, we get dust out of the carpet, aka vacuum, and the lamp will default to showing the first wish in that, or the first magic word in that array. So if I hit Control Space, we'll say out, and then we have get dust out of the carpet and take out the trash. And we'll learn about the Soviet algorithm that explains why get dust out of the carpets first. But we can also say vacuum, and that because that magic word is part of the vacuum wish, then that pops up as well. And obviously, it's configurable what's actually being displayed as well. So if you want to do that a little differently, but yeah. So when you register a wish, you get back the wish object. And so it will convert if you just pass it a string for your magic words, it'll convert that to an array. It preloads you with some data about the wish, and then you get this context thing that we'll talk about that rocks. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the bare bones of a wish. And so I'll keep going, and I'll stop at a point that makes sense to ask for questions. So we'll just move on to making a wish. So making a wish is actually just really easy. You just say Genie.makeWish, and you pass in the wish that you want to make, and then optionally you pass in the magic word that you want to make that wish with, and this is how Genie will learn the user over time. So the magic word that you pass in is basically, if I were to do out and I hit enter, this take out the trash would be made with the word out, right? And so because it actually has been made with that word, Genie has put take out the trash at the top here. And so yeah, it's actually that's a very simple API. I'm pretty sure everybody gets that. And then actually, yeah, we'll stop right here and open it up for any questions that people might have. Yeah.
How does it remember? Is it local storage or send it back to the server or anything?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the lamp is actually the one that is in control of remembering and loading Genie with the proper stuff. So Genie will keep track in memory with these options. Actually, here we'll make a wish real quick. Actually, I'm pretty sure this test case just made wishes. So it keeps track of this entered magic words. This is actually a perfect segue into this section. And then the lamp is taking that and putting it into local storage in this example. But you can also configure it to put it into Firebase for you. So those two things are built in. If you want to make your own lamp or whatever, then that's totally an option for you. You just get the entered magic words from Genie's options, and then when the application loads, you load those into Genie. So, excellent question. Yeah, Kim.
Am I just thinking weird, why there's two lines say the same thing?
Are you looking at the output?
No, the input. I'm not being picky. I'm just making sure that there's not a reason why we're doing it.
Where is this?
In the making wishes in the source code at the bottom.
In the source code at the bottom.
Scroll and there's I think
I think you're on workshop 2, right?
Yeah, I'm on 2.
Okay.
You're in three already?
Yeah, I am, but that's,
Bad, sorry.
you're good. Sorry, did that resolve your question? Or? We can chat.
Doesn't matter.
Well, here, okay, let's, very quick. Oh, you're saying just like in the source code, I'm doing the same thing a couple times?
Yeah, like why?
Yeah, so we'll talk about the King of the Hill and on deck right now, actually. So that's an excellent question. So that was in part to demonstrate King of the Hill and on deck. So any other questions before I talk about that? Okay, cool. So, did you have a question? Okay. So, at the beginning, I showed how Alfred will anticipate, oh, you type T, so you must be wanting to do terminal, but then I retrained it to do source tree. So Genie does the same thing, and in fact, it's a little bit smarter, I noticed, than Alfred in that it, how it's keeping track of these entered magic words is not just like a string, like this string was executed this wish, but it's actually an object like tree thing. I don't even know what you call this. And so I can say WI, and then wishes, or S, and then wishes was made. Actually, WI, and then this G5 wish was made. And so Genie can, like when I type W, Genie will say, oh, he might be typing wish, or he might be typing we, and in that case, this would be a wish that he would want to execute, or these would be a wish that he would want to execute. So Genie's saying, as long as you don't prove to me that you're not typing what I think you're typing, I'm going to show you those things first. So let's just do that. WI, and then if I type S, things change, and then H, and then right, and then Genie had I have no idea what you're about to do. You've never done this before, so I'm just going to match the best that I can. But yeah, so Genie will keep track of these entered magic words with these wishes, so that it can provide the most contextual wish available to you. And then Genie also learns has the concept of King of the Hill. So I'll just explain this. So when I make a wish, actually, I'll go to the demo and explain it using that. So I had a really good example. Oh yeah. So we have these 3 questions that all of these just open to a web page, but just due to the way that Genie is organizing these, this is just the basic order that these are going to be in. And so if I say WHA and I choose Alfred, I'll open up after that. And then if I open it up again with WHA, Genie's like, oh, you did Alfred last time, so we'll put Alfred first. And then if I decide, okay, I actually want to do what is a wish this time. Now, Alfred is still at the top. What is a wish is right after that. So if I do what is a wish again, so Alfred is, in this context, Alfred is considered the King of the Hill, and now what is a wish is on deck. And so if you execute an on deck wish twice, before you execute the King of the Hill, then it becomes the King of the Hill, and then the previous King of the Hill is now on deck, and then I can switch those again, and now we're switched. And then any wish, regardless of how many times it's been executed, can become on deck by being executed once. So now I can put what is in Genie.js as on deck. Okay. So I know that's that hopefully makes sense. Are there any questions about that? I'm seeing a lot of nods. So if you're embarrassed, you don't want to say you don't get it, it's okay. You can talk to me later. So that's the concept of King of the Hill and on deck. But after that, Genie does its very best to match what you've given it to the wishes that it has in its registry. And so if we give it at, for example, and we've got these wishes, I'll just show what these different, these are in priority order. So it's King of the Hill and on deck. And then if there's a wish that has a magic word that's equal, then that would show up. And then if the magic word starts with that, then that's next. If a word in the magic words starts with that, and that comes up next. If it's contained in the magic words, and that would come. If it's an acronym, then that comes up. And then if it's just a simple match, if it's like the right characters in the right order, then that would come up last. And so that one is kind of like a whatever. but it covers the use case if I forget to type a character or something, I can still get the stuff that I'm looking for. And if you don't like this matching algorithm, you think that I'm a joke, that's okay. And you can override the matching algorithm with your own. And it provides you with all the same stuff that I'm using to do this matching. Yeah, okay, so that's it with matching wishes. And so I'm going to open it up to questions because I know I talk a lot. Yeah.
So like example of email where you want to open like the third email, what would you design your wishes so you can come to the third or the seventh thing?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. What's your name? John. John, you ask great questions because we're going to talk about that. So the question was, in the Gmail example, how would you structure your wishes so that like meetup would show up in the wishes? And we'll talk about how we would do that, but not right now, in a second. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
So how does the cumulative bill get bumped to back up to on decks? Like if I've done the first one like 100 times in a row, does the on deck still bump it after 2 times in a row?
But so it's like you've been dating a girl for a really long time, and you just decide you're not compatible, and you go date another girl. All of a sudden she's king of the hill. It doesn't matter how long you dated the last girl, right? I figured everybody would get that. Any other questions? Okay, great. We'll move on to special wish actions. So this is actually really simple. It just, like a huge use case for Genie is I just want to navigate somewhere. And so if you provide a string for your action, Genie is going to assume it's a URL, and it will navigate to that URL. And then you can also provide a object and give some options. So you want to open it in a new tab. So we'll just do that real quick. We'll go home. Let's see, now I'm at home. Oh, I lost my spot. So, whoops. There we go. And then we'll go to Google. Boom. So it's just a little some sugar on top. That should be really easy. Are there any questions about that? Okay, great. Yeah, but I hope it's well too. Okay, wow, we're doing amazing on time. This is so great. Okay, so enabling and disabling Genie. So in the product that I put this in, some users might not want Genie. Don't ask me why. I think it's crazy, but they might not. And so I made it really easy to enable and disable Genie and put a little bit of extra work into it, more than just not doing anything. So if you disable Genie, all you have to do is say Genie.enabled is false. But if I were to say get matching wishes on Genie, then it'll return an empty array instead of just like undefined. So it returns a sensical, empty object, array, string, whatever would make sense for the method that you're hitting. And the reason for that is you don't want to do no checking and undefined checking and all of this weird stuff throughout all of your code. And so you can say, hey, get matching wishes, and then iterate on that list of wishes, and you don't have to worry about whether that actually exists. You can call that length on it, no worries. If you don't like this, for some weird reason, let me know, because I'm interested in use cases, but you can turn that off, and it'll just return undefined, or, it just doesn't return any. No, it returns null. So if you just want to disable that behavior. So yeah, it's pretty simple. You can look at the workshop and play around with it a little bit if you like. And yeah, so we're about to get into the next thing that applies a little bit to John's question and is hopefully not super confusing. So I'm going to stop right now for questions before we move on. Oh, yeah.
I haven't got to watch the YouTube video which explains this, so I'm going to ask you. I saw that it talked about the demo not working on mobile device, or just kind of touch device. I just wonder if you could, if it's easily summarizable, kind of how this fits in
mobile? Yeah, that's a terrific question, Zach. So it actually, the demo does work on mobile pretty well. So yeah, it's just kind of silly. But you just click on this and it's rubbing the lamp. So it's like, and boom, lamps up. So I actually have a project where I don't use the lamp. I just use like a search bar, and that like is powered by Genie. And so, like, as far as the mobile story goes, like, mobile is a little bit different because you have to like key in, and that's not really super fast. So I think that touch and typing are, like, depending on what you're trying to do, about equally faster, or typing might be slower. So yeah, this isn't a super awesome use case for mobile, I'd say. I don't know, people could disagree with me, but I think that this is mostly a use case for with a full-on keyboard.
Okay. So you see people turning it off when they, or I mean, have you seen implementations where if they
Where it's turned off on mobile? I haven't seen implementations like that, but I could understand if somebody were to do that. But like in my case of like having a search bar, it still makes sense because even on mobile you want to have a search bar. So, and it can be powered by Genie. Yeah.
Yeah, in browser, when you type the URL, sometimes will pop out the snap URL like related to your previous search. Then they have the function. If you highlight certain URL, then you can delete that will just remove from the search next time to loop and this function.
No, there isn't anything like that. That's an interesting use case, and I'd love an issue or a PR to that effect.
So that's really useful. You don't want the
Yeah, so you'd have like user-specific options for Genie. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, I think. Yeah, awesome question. That actually is good use case, like the omnibar thing on mobile. So I'm not saying that Genie is not useful on mobile. It's just not like it's not fast, or it's not much faster than just interfacing with it normally. But it can be very useful on mobile. So. Great questions. Okay, so now we're going to get into context. I'm so glad I have some time because context is everything in an application. So let's say here I am in Gmail. I forgot to say, this is my son Nathan, that's my daughter Becca. They're adorable, and they're older now. So here I am, I want to reply to a message, but it doesn't really make sense for me to reply right here. If I hit the R key, Gmail understands that. It makes no sense for me to reply right here. What am I replying to? I guess like technically I could hit select that one, but it still doesn't really make a lot of sense. So Gmail is context aware. It's aware of my current context being in the inbox. It makes no sense for R to reply because, well, it doesn't make sense. Hope I made myself clear. I said that a lot. So Genie is the same way. If we were to put Genie in here, we wouldn't want to have a reply option available in your list of wishes. And so context in Genie is probably like one of the very most powerful features right next to its sorting algorithm. So each wish has a property that looks like this called context. And if you don't provide a context property, it will, well, yeah, so let me back up. There is a default context for Genie and all the wishes. And that default context is just called universe. But for a wish to be in context, there are a couple of things that will make it a surefire way to be in context, and then if those things aren't true, then Genie will check the wish's context options or property to see whether or not it should be in context. So the surefire way, if Genie's current context is the default context, then all wishes will be in context. And so if you want to do anything with context, you'll want, when you start up Genie, or like start registering wishes, you want to set Genie's context to some application-specific context so that you can mess around with it and like have some wishes out of context. And then if the wish's context.any contains the default context, then that wish will always be in context, whether or not Genie's in universe context or not. And so, like, again, if you want to do something with context, you want to always set the context of your wishes. And then if the wish's context is equal to the current context, then it'll be in context. I should have asked somebody to like jot down how many times I say the word context, because I'm about to say it about 100 more times. So if none of those things are true, if you've properly set your Genie's context and you set all your wishes context, then Genie's going to look at the context property of the wish. And it should be pretty intuitive. For this particular wish to be in context, Genie's current context will have to contain both of these, one of these, and none of these. I'm going to stop right there. I'm seeing a nod, another nod, a couple more nods. Any questions? It's okay if you have questions. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So you can really fine-tune and control what context your wishes are in. And it would be extremely easy for me to say, and actually we'll see in the next bit how much easier it'll be, but it'd be easy for me to say, oh, in that, it'd be easy for me to say, hey, reply in the message details context. Right, so, yeah, that hopefully makes sense. And you have a couple context functions. You can set the context, add or remove, and then restore. We'll set Genie to the default, and then revert, we'll set it to the previous context. So Genie will keep track of one previous context from the last time that it was changed. And so you can go back, and that's actually really useful for something that is called subcontext that we'll look at in a little bit. So yeah, that's context. You can look at the details here. I'm not going to go in depth further than I have unless somebody really feels like that would be a super valuable thing for their soul. So any questions before we move on? We might have questions after this next one, we'll see. So there's this path context. So a huge use case for context is the URL. So when I go to a message, the URL changes. You see now it's inbox/ID of the email message, right? And so it'd be really nice if there was some way for me to say, hey Genie, I want you to have this context when the URL looks like this. Well, Genie will do that. Genie will not, I should emphasize, Genie is not a browser-specific thing. We can actually use this in Node, but you can provide it with a URL, and it will change its context based on the way that you've configured it. So here you have a path context array, and you just say, hey Genie, here are a couple of paths or regexes that I want you to update yourself with your context. So let me just run through this really quick, and hopefully it'll make sense. I'm sure that it doesn't yet. So I can say, hey, when my path is just /, I want the context to be the default context. If it's /home, then home and cool context. And then if it matches this path or an array, or one of these arrays, then I want the context to look like this. And I want you to take this group and put it in right there, and that group and put it in right there. And so it gives you a little bit of flexibility on how the context is constructed. And so then you just say, hey, add path context, and you pass it that away, and then you've got it. And then what you do is you update the path context. So anytime you watch the URL yourself, you say, hey Genie, update path context, here's the path. And Genie will automatically match that path with what you provided and set its context according to those things. So this was a super powerful feature for me when I implemented it and put it into our product. It just made managing context a breeze, really nice. So hopefully it's useful for all of you guys who I know just can't wait to get this into your electronics. So I'll just stop right there and open it up for questions about context in general, or Genie, or whether. Yes, Pam, please.
So here's one of the obvious things about some people who might use this as kind of an accessibility hack in a way, but have you asked people in the accessibility community for feedback of what would make this really a power tool for people to use as an accessibility feature?
That's a great question. Thanks, Pam. So the question is, have I talked to the community about how to make this a huge accessibility win? And the answer is yes, yesterday. I talked to Monica after her talk, and she gave me a couple of tips, but I think that's a really good idea, and so I am going to reach out to the community at large and see what features Genie is missing. I think it'd be more the lamp that would need the accessibility stuff. But yeah, that's an excellent question, and I truly believe that like a huge use case for Genie and the lamp is not only like usability for power users, but usability for or accessibility for disabled or somebody who needs that help. So yeah.
I know you said you're using it at your previous company. Do you have any statistics or anything? I guess what I'm ultimately asking is, you feel like this is battle tested or anything for production?
It is pretty well tested. I would recommend it for production for sure. I've got it on a couple of like personal projects. And as far as statistics go, I do track like every wish that's made on here. I track that. I haven't looked at it in a while though, so I can't give you any like hard data on how often it's used or how well it performs. But I think it performs great. So that was a good question. Any other questions before we move on?
I would say that was a bad question.
I have some, but it's a good question every time. I'm like, call that out.
I didn't mean that quickly.
No, you're right. Cool. Okay, so that's it for Genie. We're gonna jump into the lamp and the Angular stuff. So if you're not an Angular person, you should be one. I'm just trolling you. If you're not an Angular person, that's okay. But feel free to tune out and tweet about how great Genie is. So we're gonna jump into Angular stuff. So there's a module called Genie that's powering the lamp, and it also has a directive called Genie Wish. So these are two directives that you have at your disposal to use Genie. Oh, and if you're not an Angular person, please come talk to me, and let's talk about how you can help me make a vanilla JS version of the lamp, because that's something that's been on my mind for a while. So anyway, yeah, you have the lamp, and that's beauty. And then you have Genie Wish that makes it a lot easier to create wishes, and you'll see that in a second. You're gonna love Genie Wish; it's so great. So the bare bones example for UX lamp. That's it. It's just making an attribute on a div, and boom, you've got it. What you don't have is the beautiful styling. What you will have is a little text area or text box wherever you put that, and it'll just kind of be there, and divs will pop up all over the place, and it won't look good. But you can copy my styles if you want. That's cool. So yeah, it's very simple bare bones, but you can make it a little or a lot more customizable, and we'll look at that in a little bit. But as far as like the default, what it comes with is, like I said, every wish has a data property on it, and the UX Genie or the lamp will look for a UX Genie property, and you can give it a couple of useful things. So you can give it an eye icon, and it'll just like take that as a class and apply it to an eye tag, and so you can have cool icons. And you can also do an img, and it'll put it as the source of an image tag. So we can say Google, or I can say Smile, and those are images. I can say Flash, that's awesome. So you have this option for you to make it more like Alfred-y, right? Because I think Alfred did a great job, so I try to emulate what they do. Yeah, so that's icons. They're pretty self-explanatory, I think. Actually, let me stop for questions real quick. There could be a gem out there, and I don't want to miss it. So, okay. Great. So context. This one's cool, and this goes back to what John was asking about messages. So personally, like the way that I use Gmail, it would make a lot of sense for every one of these to be a wish, and I could just type meetup, and boom, I go into the meetup. But the way that most people that I've seen use Gmail is like this, and it's just like this crazy, hairy, huge thing that is the reason why I actually do this. It's so much better. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for for Genie to just be loaded with a whole huge list of things that becomes unusable at that point. And so we have the subcontext, and I'll just show you how a user would use this, and it will make sense instantly. So I'll say search posts, Merry Christmas. Okay, so is that making sense what this is doing? So if I go back in here, the only wish that I have is search posts, but like potentially if this were in Gmail or something, I have like a big one, nice list of posts, but none of these posts are in that list. And so this is again a UX lamp thing that the UX Genie module is doing. But basically what it's doing is it's setting a temporary context for you so that you can register a whole bunch of wishes with this temporary context, and then that becomes in context when you make a subcontext wish. So I want to show you how that's done. So you create a wish called whatever the heck you want with whatever context you want, but make sure it's in context, which it is. And then you give the data UX subcontext property the context that you want it to be temporarily assigned to when that wish is made. So you don't need an action necessarily for this, but you can have one. And then you create another set of wishes with the context that will be the context when you're in subcontext, out of context. But hopefully that makes sense. And so all of a sudden, once this wish is made, Genie will pre-fill it with the whole wish so that it kind of makes sense, and then you can go in and get the rest of the wishes. And during Christmas Eve at the grandparents, it's awesome. So hopefully that makes sense. And so like in the context of Gmail, I would potentially have like a wish that was like open email and then type the name or the subject or have like all kinds of, you could even load in a magic word for the whole content of the email if you want. So I don't know if that would be the best way to do that, but we could. Okay, any questions about subcontext? I've got about 7 minutes, and I've got about like 3 minutes because I want to let you guys go a little bit later. So. Okay, great. So we've got like 2 more steps. So the UX lamp is obviously a lot more customizable. You can provide it with the variable you want to have bound to whether or not Genie is visible. So you can, that's what I'm doing to make it so I can click on this and make it visible. You can define the web class, so if you don't like visible, whenever Genie is wrapped and you want it to become visible, it'll just apply this class. If you don't supply a web class, then you just use an ng shell hide. So like this makes it so that you can do cool animations and such. And then you can specify the shortcut, that's the spacebar, and the modifier, so that's control. So that's the default. But if you wanted to do something else, then you can. And then even the event type. And it just like, I just like hit an event, or I listen to that specific event. And then callback anytime a wish is made. I'm using that to collect analytics on when wishes are made in the demo. And then you can choose local storage or file base to have the lamp keep track of the entered magic words. So it'll keep track of that. So yeah, those are the options that you have with the UX lamp right now. Any questions about that? Could be pretty straightforward, yeah.
So almost all of the stream bound except for
yeah, good question. So this is doubly bound. This is callback. And the rest of these are stream bound.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, good question. Okay, last one, and then we can I'll do your air squats again. So, Genie Wish. This one's great. I like this one a lot. I use it all the time. So you just apply Genie Wish to an element, and then with the bare bones, it's the equivalent to doing this. So Genie Wish will basically just say, hey Genie, make a wish out of this element, and when that wish is executed, click on this element. But you can also configure what element or what event you want to have happen, and what the magic words are, and like what the context is, all that, and even like the data you want. And even an event modifier. All those things. Both like configuring Genie and adding wishes like to an application like this is just as simple as finding that button and saying Genie wish, and providing it with the magic word that you want to have happen, and then all of a sudden like you got it and it's nice and you love it. And it's great. So that one should be pretty self-explanatory. And if you do have questions about like what that translates to, it's basically the equivalent to this. So you can look at that and see. But that should be pretty easy. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for coming to our talk. Appreciate it.